Let's begin. All right, so as you can see, this is M16A4 Maintenance. As I mentioned to some of those who are already here, this is to give you a general idea of how to maintain the M16A4 service rifle. Now, because we don't have the M16s, this is just to give you familiarization. You'll become very familiar with how to maintain your weapon while you're at OCS. So don't think that because we can't get hands-on with the M16s right here, doesn't mean that you're going to be at a detriment. At the very least, you'll know how to disassemble it, what the different parts, the nomenclature of the M16, and how to generally take care of your weapon before anyone else. So let's get into it. So your terminal learning objective is given a service rifle, sling, cleaning gear, perform maintenance to ensure the weapon is complete, clean, and serviceable without error. Ultimately, take care of your weapon is what it wants you to do. That's the ultimate goal of this class. To do that, our enabling learning objectives are: without the aid of reference, with an M16A4 given a description of one or more of the 4 stoppage indicators, conduct corrective action. Given a service rifle, cleaning, equipment, lubricant, and workspace, disassemble and assemble the rifle in sequence to prepare for user-level maintenance. Given a service rifle, cleaning, equipment, lubricant, and a workspace, maintain the rifle to ensure proper function. Given a service rifle, workspace, perform a function check to ensure proper function of the weapon. And without the aid of reference, identify the nomenclature of an M16A4 service rifle without error. So I'm going to leave this up here for a minute so you can copy what you need to know down. And again, this is all going to be on kind of that first real practical test you get at Officer Candidate School. All right. If we need to copy them down later, we'll come back. So, nomenclature of the M16A4. The M16 composed of 3 main groups: the upper receiver, the lower receiver, and the bulk carrier group. Now, the bulk carrier group lies within the upper receiver. So we're going to go over the upper receiver nomenclature itself. First, you have the compensator. That's the tip of the barrel right there. Then the front sight assembly. That is the front part of your iron sights. Your bayonet stud, where, as the name suggests, you would attach a bayonet. The barrel, which actually encompasses all the way down to the slip ring, which you'll see in a moment. Hand guards, which cover all around the barrel surface. The slip ring, so that's where the barrel essentially comes down to. The rear sight assembly, that would be the rear half of your iron sights. So you need to have both your rear and front sight assembly in order to use your iron sights. Your ejection port, and then the ejection port cover. And your spent brass deflector. This is what's going to keep the brass from flying back into your face, especially those of you who are left-handed and plan to shoot left-handed. That way the brass isn't flying right into your face. And your forward assist. This is it's a little button you press to make sure that the rounds are properly being seated in the chamber before you fire. All right. And then your charging handle. This is the handle that you pull back to actually pull the bolt to the rear and then initially bring a round into the chamber. If the round doesn't fully get seated, that's when you use that forward assist. And then the carrying handle. Now, you guys will be using the M16A4. The A4 does not have the carrying handle. The A4 is present on the A1, 2, and 3 models of the M16. So looking at an old A1 model, that is the carrying handle. You do not carry it by the carrying handle. So if you ever do come across an older version of the M16 with a carrying handle, you will not grasp it along that. You will carry it properly via the pistol grip and handguards. All right, so let's talk about the lower receiver. So you got the magazine release button. It's a little button you press, and it, as the name suggests, kicks out the magazine. Your magazine will not come out on its own until you press that button. It'll actually kind of drop down a little bit. If you angle it properly, it'll just slide out. But you need to maintain positive control of your magazines when you eject them. Trigger guard, enough said on that one. Rear and front takedown pins. So these are the two pins that keep the lower and upper receiver attached. They are on the lower receiver. You push them out on the left side, and they'll pop out on the right side. They will not actually be removed from the M16. They're kept on the lower receiver, but you need to push them out in order to remove the upper from the lower receiver. The selector lever, you can see what you're selecting on either the left or right side of the M16. The lever itself is actually on the left side. So you can't see the little switch, but you can still see that this one is currently set to safe. Or no, actually it's set to burst. No, safe. But on the other side, you can swap it to semi and then burst. The pistol grip, as name implies. Bolt catch. Now, you can't actually see the bolt catch. It's inside the lower receiver. That's what keeps the hammer and the bolt from just constantly flying around, making the M16 an automatic weapon. But it sits inside the lower receiver, just in front of the hammer. Butt plate assembly. The rear of the buttstock, if that makes any sense. And then the buttstock itself. Now inside the buttstock, you're going to find the buffer and the action spring. These do get pulled out of the buttstock during maintenance. Mainly make sure there's no moisture or anything in the tube back there. You don't want it to rust up and lose its function. Any questions on the lower receiver nomenclature? All right. So the bolt carrier group, it consists of the bolt carrier, which is actually this, the long, that is the bolt carrier. Carrier key, which is that little trunk-like aspect sticking out of the bolt carrier. The bolt, this entire device is the bolt itself. Gas rings, the extractor, that's what pulls the cartridge back out of the barrel after it's been fired. The firing pin, the cam pin is actually what's going to keep your bolt inside the bolt carrier. And then the firing retaining pin. Apparently my animations were being quirky. So the firing retaining pin is what's going to keep your firing pin from falling out the back. So your firing pin will go in your bolt carrier group and bolt here. And if you were to essentially just turn it 90 degrees to the left, if you didn't have that pin, your firing pin would just fall out. Any questions on the bolt carrier group nomenclature? All right, so we're going to talk about dismantling. Now, I tried to find a couple videos for y'all, but they are either done by people who had no idea what they were doing, or they're just such poor quality that it wasn't even worth trying to show you. So I'm going to essentially talk step through step with you on dismantling. Again, if this isn't making 100% sense right now, just understand this is to give you a general idea of what you need to do to dismantle the weapon. That when you get to OCS and they show you, it'll all click. So it'll make a lot more sense. So first thing you need to do is to remove the upper and lower receiver from each other. You're going to take an object, usually it's one of your cleaning rods. In this example, it looks like they're using the round of an M16 to pop open the front and rear retaining pins. So you're going to pop out the pin here, and you're going to pop out the pin here. And it's going to allow you to separate the upper and lower receiver from each other as depicted in here. Then you're going to grab the charging handle and you're going to pull back on the upper receiver. That's going to pull the entire bolt carrier group out. You're then going to remove the bolt carrier group from the charging handle, and then you're also going to remove the charging handle itself from the upper receiver. To dismantle the bolt carrier group, you're going to take an object. You don't even really need anything. You just use your finger. You're going to pop out the firing pin retaining pin. You're then going to push the bolt in, and that's going to allow you to, when you turn the bolt upside down, to allow the firing pin to fall out. Now, you need to make sure you're maintaining positive control of all these devices at all times. Generally, when you're cleaning the bolt carrier group, you're going to have your cover off, and you can just put everything in your cover. That way it's not going missing. To get the bolt out, you need to take the cam pin, and you have to turn it 90 degrees. So then the cam pin will come out, and that will allow you to pull out the bolt itself. Now, you can break down the bolt even further. You will not break down the bolt further. Do not feel tempted to break down the bolt further. You will do that at TBS. That is not something you need to do at OCS unless they instruct you otherwise. There are a lot of tiny little pieces. That little circle right there is a very tiny little pin. It goes missing all the time. Do not be the one who loses that. You will not enjoy your time at OCS. So this is about as far down as you're going to break the bolt in the bolt carrier group. You're going to remove the firing pin, the cam pin, and the bolt from the bolt carrier group, and that is about it. Additionally, you're going to take out the buffer and the action spring. To do that, there's a little tiny button on the bottom side of the buttstock. You're just going to press that, and it's immediately going to shoot out. It's probably going to get caught by the hammer here. Just push the hammer down, and you'll be able to pull the rest of it out. And that's pretty much all you have to do to dismantle it. It's designed to be easy. Does anyone need me to go back and explain anything about dismantling the M16? I know these are graphics. These are actually the graphics you will get in your study guide. Going once, going twice. No questions? We're all experts? Excellent, I knew it. All right. Cleaning materials. So the cleaning materials we're going to have are brushes. So the brushes that you'll have, they're bore brushes, and then the toothbrush looking one is just your general brush. You're going to have rods, not much to them. You generally attach your bore brushes to them. That's what you use to punch out the bore. Make sure that's clean. There's no carbon or any residue left behind from you firing the weapon. You're going to have your eyelet and cloth to clean it with. This is a combination of using in both the bore as well as the chamber itself. And you have what we call clean, lubricant, and preservative. CLP is what you're going to call it. It's essential for cleaning the weapon. Keep in mind, though, you don't want to leave too much CLP on. It has a tendency of pulling out old carbon. So if you douse your M16 in CLP and you don't dry it off, it's just going to keep sucking up carbon, and that'll actually cause it to malfunction later on. So you don't want that to happen. Any questions on the different types of cleaning materials that we have? Thrilling stuff, I know. All right. Cleaning considerations for the upper receiver. Make sure you're using the cleaning rods and bore brush to clean the barrel. And you must insert it through the chamber. Do not be the one who stares down your barrel. I know the upper receiver is removed from the lower receiver, and it's like that. There's a 9,000% chance it will not go off. But don't be the one they catch staring down the barrel. It's awkward. The chamber isn't generally big enough for everything you get in there, but as you assemble the cleaning rods and you push it in, you'll be able to get the bore through. It does take a bit of effort to push the barrel brush all the way through, so just be aware of that. Once you've sufficiently cleaned the bore in the barrel, you're then going to take one of those eyelets, you're going to put it on the other end of those rods, and you're actually going to kind of do the opposite. You're still going to go through the chamber, but instead of putting the swab down first, you're going to send the rod side down first, and you're going to pull the cleaning swab through that way. So instead of pushing, you're pulling in this instance. You're going to use your chamber brush. That's that narrow one. So if we go back, the bore brush, this is the bore brush. It's got the bristles on the side. It'll allow you to clean out the bore. This is the chamber brush generally. Now, Are they going to tell you to use one or the other necessarily? No. But those are the two types of brushes. So you'll use your chamber brush to clean out the chamber itself. That's the entire area where the bolt kind of sits when it's forward. And then you'll use the swabs to kind of clean off whatever is left. Again, like I mentioned, don't leave excess CLP in the chamber. Use any of those swabs or patches you have to remove excess CLP and carbon. Any questions?
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
This is Kent Reynolds from Fargo OST. I just had a couple recommendations for just getting around the bolt lugs.
Sure.
All right, so if any of you have dealt with an AR-15 or the M16 prior, you know that when you're cleaning that thing, those bolt lugs they're the nastiest part. The way they sit within the upper receiver, it's really difficult to get in there with your finger or even the brush that you got. Now, the chamber brush is going to be good at breaking down that carbon, but you're not going to be able to get all the gunk out that you'll notice it when you ride in because it'll be difficult to wrap back around. So whenever you get liberty, or if you even have a chance to prepare beforehand, getting a small metal pick that's able to bend around and reach there, you can attach cleaning patches back there, and it's way more effective than simply just running a piece of cloth in there, because you'll have towels that are great for any surfaces on the lower receiver, upper receiver, or even the barrel, but you're definitely going to need to get in there.
Awesome. Thank you, Ken Reynolds.
Right.
All right. Any other suggestions? Any other tips or tricks anyone's found from OCS or elsewhere? All right. So let's talk about the lower receiver. This is generally easier to maintain because while there are technically more moving parts, this is not where most of the carbon builds up. Where the carbon will build up is in and around the magazine well and the hammer, so you need to make sure that you're thoroughly taking care of them, as well as any of the joints that move back and forth. So make sure that you're still brushing, you're still checking for any excess carbon, you're keeping it nice and dry. Like I said, remove that buffer in the action spring and ensure the tube inside is dry. Virginia's a wet place. It's probably going to rain a few times when you guys are out there. So don't be surprised if you got to make sure that tube and the action spring and the buffer are nice and dry after a field exercise. Any questions? All right. And then the bolt carrier group. This is what is going to be your most filthy aspect besides maybe the chamber of your M16. This is where all the action is taking place when you fire the weapon. And guess what? Blanks make probably 5 times as much carbon as a regular round. So you're going to make sure you want to clean the outer and inner surfaces of the bolt carrier, naturally. You're going to want to clean the bolt carrier key with CLP only. So you're not trying to use, don't throw water or anything. Just use CLP only in general when you're cleaning these weapons. Don't be trying to experiment with new cleaning solutions. Clean the locking lugs, gas rings, and exterior of the bolt with general purpose brush and the CLP. That's that toothbrush looking thing you saw. Use swab to the rear of the bolt to clean out the firing pin and recesses and gas ports. This is going to be where all your carbon gets trapped. A good armor will be able to stick his finger in there and pull out loads and loads of carbon that you didn't think could exist. There must be like an extra dimensional port in there. The amount of carbon they can pull out of those little holes. There are 3 little holes at the top of the bolt carrier group, just underneath the key. That's where a lot of carbon gets stuck. So you need to be sure to get in there, and it's just going to take a lot of scrubbing, a lot of doing. If you think you can clean a rifle in 30 minutes after you've been out in the field for a few days, you have a very good imagination. All right. Any questions of the bolt carrier group, or does anyone have any tips or tricks for cleaning the bolt carrier group? All right. Functions test. Now, I do have a video for the functions test, but I'm going to go through it with you first, and then I'm going to essentially show it to you. Now, this is essential. This is going to prove to you that not only did you clean the weapon properly, but you put it back together properly. Because of course, when you take it apart, you got to put it back together. You just put it together in the reverse order that you took it apart. So this is going to tell you that the weapon is working properly, hence why it's called the functions test. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to pull the charging handle back to the rear and then release it. So it's going to send the bolt home. You're then going to make sure the selector lever is on safe. It should already be on safe. And you're going to squeeze the trigger once. Nothing should happen. The trigger shouldn't even go all the way to the rear. Then you're going to place the selector lever on semi. You're going to squeeze the trigger and you're going to hear it click. The hammer fell. While you're going to keep that trigger held to the rear, and you're going to charge the weapon once. You're going to pull the charging handle back, let it go, send the bolt back home, and you're going to slowly release the trigger. You're going to hear a clunk. That shows you that the trigger has reset. It means it's ready to fire another semi-automatic round. If it doesn't reset, it means that the trigger and the hammer didn't properly reset, and there's a possibility that it'll either not fire again, or two, turn into an automatic weapon. Most likely the former, hopefully not the latter. Then what you're going to do is you're going to put the weapon on burst. You're going to squeeze the trigger and the hammer is going to fall because, again, it reset itself. Then you're going to take the charging handle, you're going to pull it 3 times and letting the bolt go home every single time. Then again, going to slowly release the trigger and you're going to hear another clunk. Squeeze the trigger again and the hammer should fall. Then you're going to charge the weapon one last time, put the selector lever on safe, and then you close the ejection port cover. Now, why do we need to charge the weapon one last time before we put it on safe? Does anyone remember from the last class?
If it's not, it needs to be charged in order for you to put it on safe.
Correct. You need to have the weapon cocked in order for it to be able to be put on safe. So, very good. All right. So we're going to watch a video on the functions test, and if anyone's got any questions, let me know. We'll be able to go through it one at a time. Sound good? All right. Yes, I know it's the Army, but it was a good video. All right. Does that make a lot more sense after watching the video? Is anyone confused by what you need to do for the functions test? No? Perfect. Someone have a question?
No, so probably just, this is Logan Vanaha, and I'm on a mobile device right now, and the video was buffering heavily, so I did not get to see it, but I assume it's similar to the graphics that we just talked about. So I should be fine.
And
Sorry.
I'll be uploading this video as well, so don't worry.
Right. Thank you.
All right. So now we're going to talk about corrective actions. So what these are corrective actions for stoppages. Who knows what the difference between a stoppage and a malfunction is? So stoppage is something usually that you did wrong that resulted in the M16 not working properly. A malfunction is something mechanically wrong with the weapon. So you can't say your weapon is malfunctioning if you did something wrong to it. Now, you're going to have to understand what these 4 stoppages are and how to correct them. So in this instance, the bolt is forward, the ejection port cover is closed. What that typically means is that, well, it didn't fire. So you pull the trigger, nothing happened. But when you look, your bolt is forward and the ejection port cover is closed. So the first thing you always do is look to see what's wrong. If that happens, the simple response is to what we call tap, rack, bang. You're going to smack the bottom of the magazine. You're going to recharge the handle to rack it another round in there, and then you're going to attempt to fire. Bang. Generally, the reason this happens is when you seated the magazine and you pulled the charging handle back, the magazine wasn't properly seated. So when the bolt went forward, it didn't catch a round to load it in the chamber. So that's why nothing happened. So if you look and you see that your ejection port cover is closed after you pull the trigger, that's probably why. Now, this can also happen while you are shooting after your initial rounds. That probably means that you didn't load your magazine properly and a round got stuck. So if you look, that's the case. You should try tap, rack, bang unless you know that you're empty. Otherwise, there's another stoppage for that one. All right. So you're firing. All of a sudden, you fire, nothing happens. You turn your rifle, and you see that amazing graphic on the side. Nice little stovepipe. Bunch of rounds are stuck on top of each other. That is just a nightmare right there. So what you're going to do is you're going to attempt to remove the magazine. Get the magazine out. Then you're going to attempt to lock the bolt to the rear. If the bolt does not, again, you're also going to put the weapon on safe. That way you don't have anything bad happen. Attempt to lock the bolt to the rear. Now, if the bolt locks to the rear, that's good. It means you should be able to get everything out. If not, though, hold the ejection port cover facing down and pull the charging handle back as far as you can, and then start shaking the rifle. Now, ideally, the rounds should fall free, but if they don't, you may need to pry them out either with one of the cleaning rods, or if you don't have time with your finger. I would try to get something other than your finger, because if you let go of that bolt and you send it home, you're going to have a crushed finger. So try your best not to stick your finger in there if you don't have to. Once you've cleared the chamber of all the obstructing rounds, you're going to reload, re-rack, and you're going to resume attempting fire. That should correct the issue. Now, firing. All of a sudden, you pull the trigger, nothing happens. You turn your rifle on the side, and you see that the bolt is locked to the rear and the ejection port cover is open. Well, this means that you ran out of ammunition. So you need to remove your magazine, conduct a dry reload. You're going to send the bolt home, and then you're going to sight in and attempt to fire again. Pretty simple, right? Now, and then the last one is audible pop or reduced recoil. So you're firing, and you're going to get very familiar with what this weapon feels like when you pull the trigger and it fires. All of a sudden, it kind of makes a weird noise, or it doesn't really recoil the way you're familiar with. You're immediately going to stop firing. You're going to take your finger off the trigger, because this means one of two things. Either soft pop, meaning that the round didn't fully ignite with all the ignition inside of it. I'm losing my words. So now there's the potential that there is a bullet somewhere in the barrel that didn't make it all the way out. The last thing you need is to fire another round with something possibly stuck in the bore. Or you have a slow burn, meaning that the weapon didn't ignite properly, and there's still the potential for the round to go off. So you're going to immediately make your rifle condition 4 as much as you can. So you're going to remove the magazine, you're going to put the bolt back to the rear, you're going to put the weapon on safe. You're going to inspect the bore for instruction. Again, from the chamber side, you should never, ever, regardless if it is an M16, an airsoft pistol, paintball gun, or if it's a Nerf gun, look down the barrel of a weapon. I cannot emphasize that enough. You will never look down the bore of your weapon, ever. Does anyone have any issue with what I'm saying there? Do not be the one to look down your weapon. Okay. You're then going to take your cleaning rod out. Yes, it actually lives with you. It lives in the buttstock of your M16. And you're going to take the cleaning rod and you're going to remove any obstructions. You're then going to reassemble your rifle. You're going to conduct a reload. You're going to sight in and attempt fire. Now, unless you are told otherwise, this is what you do in a real life situation. During training, if you hear an audible pop or a reduced recoil, you're going to put that weapon on safe, make it condition 4. You're going to raise your hand and you're going to get someone over there to come look at your rifle, because that's something you don't want to mess with. If it does have a slow burning round in it, and you start messing around with it, and if you forget your weapon safety rules and you accidentally point that at someone, that thing goes off, well, that's someone who's not going to have a good day, and you're not going to have a good day either. So if your weapon does have an audible pop or reduced recoil, especially if you're on a firing range, just raise your hand, be like, reduced recoil, audible pop, just let them know what's going on. They'll be able to get someone over there to check it out. For anyone who's been to OCS, have they told you otherwise to actually try to correct that if it happens? Roger. So just know this is what you would do in a real world situation if you're out there in combat, but during training, ask for assistance if this happens. We don't want to mess around with a possibly hot weapon. All right. So I know this is very light since we can't actually get hands-on with the M16s like I mentioned before. You will get plenty of practice assembling and disassembling your weapon while you're at officer candidate school. Generally, if there's a little bit of downtime, you're probably doing maintenance on your weapon. Hopefully that thing is in better condition when you return to the armory than when you got it, meaning you're properly taking care of the weapon. So take what you learn here, be familiar with what the nomenclature of the M16 is, how to dismantle it, and then when you actually get there and they ask you to dismantle the weapon, you at least have a general idea of what you need to do in order to break it down and clean it. So what questions do you all have? Is there anything that didn't make sense while I was going over the class, or anything you need me to go in further detail with? Man, I must be a really good teacher. No questions.
This is untrained candidate Nick Rick from OSD Fargo, and I have an AR-15, and when I clean it, with the bolt rings, you're told not to let those spaces line up. What will happen if they do line up? Because I've always wondered that.
I've never heard anyone say that before, so I'm not actually sure. They've never told me that, or anyone that I know that at either officer candidate school or the basic school, because you're going to get taught the M16 again at the basic school. So sadly, Candidate Rec, I can't answer that question for you.
Oh, that's all right. Thank you, sir.
What other questions you guys have?
Excuse me, sir.
Yep.
This is Canada Reynolds again from OST Fargo. This just has general information on any advice you have because since there's going to be inspections during OCS, they expect that rifle to be pristine. And while I know that 6 inches barrel is kind of the hot spot that everybody says, make sure that's clean and rust free along with the break. For the buttstock, what are some recommendations you have? Because that CLP doesn't seem to work on that plastic as well as you would like to.
Mm-hmm. I would actually advise against using CLP on the buttstock. It's not meant for plastic. It's meant purely for hard metal surfaces. So if it gets anywhere else, it's actually not good. Like don't be using it on the hand guards or anything like that. Honestly, just like, taking a quick, I wouldn't say wet, maybe just a lightly damp rag and giving it the once over does wonders. If at OCS, like they'll have hoses. So if you go through the Quigley or something, you'll probably wind up getting the M16 sprayed down just as much as you. That usually cleans it up pretty good, but just taking a rag and giving it a couple good wipes usually cleans it up pretty well. Just make sure that you're being careful of the tape when you're marking your rifles, that you're not like getting that soaked and then having to completely remark your rifle again.
All right, roger that.
Outside of that, you're just following what they tell you is what they want. The cleanliness of the rifles is only going to get stricter after officer candidate school. Like turning in your weapons at the basic school is probably like one of the most notorious things ever. And then likewise, anytime you come back from the firing range, that weapon needs to be carbon free. Not to say that you guys are handing in horrible weapons at OCS, but the standards are just going to keep going up. So they're going to give you the baseline, and it's just going to get more compound more and more as you advance more in your Marine Corps career. What other questions you guys got? Swear I don't bite. It'd be hard to do so over the internet anyway.
Captain Dem, this is untrained candidate Demi from OST Fargo. On the packing list for OCS, there's usually bore snake listed. What would a bore snake do in terms of the cleaning process for you?
Good question. So bore snake essentially makes cleaning the bore easier, I would say. You essentially throw it down the chamber like you did, so that it's a little bit easier to clean vice the punch rods, because you just pull it down. Now you still need the bore brushed to actually get everything, but the bore snake is nice because it's longer. So instead of that little swath on that eyelet, which may not get the entire bore, that snake is going to pretty much suck up anything that was loosened up by punching it out with the bore brush. So that's what it'll do. It's a more all-encompassing swab compared to the little patches on the eyelet.
Thank you, sir.
Do one more question. I'm sure there's one more out there. Remember, there's no such thing as a dumb question. You're probably going to hear that 50 times at OCS. All right. Well, if there are no more questions, then, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending. I'm going to be putting this up as well. This did record, so I should have all those up. I'm hoping today. I'm trying to get all that sorted out, but if it isn't today, it should be tomorrow. So I will send out an email with a link once it is all uploaded, so you can all view these classes as well. I should also be able to get the PowerPoints out shortly. I'm working with Cam Randall using Slack as a way of distributing these PowerPoints. So I'll hang out for a minute if anyone has any other questions. Otherwise, the next class is on Friday. It'll be on customs and courtesies, the devilishly important thing to know, because you don't want to call your gunnery sergeant staff sergeant. Trust me on that. Otherwise, have a good rest of your day, ladies and gentlemen. I will talk to you and teach you on Friday.
Thank you, sir.
Sir. Have a good day, sir.
Thank you. Yep.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
sir.
sir.
Captain.
Yep,
Hey, that video, is that a YouTube video?
it is.
Okay. All right.
Yep, I trimmed up a bit because they talk about their standards. They essentially do their TLO at the beginning, but I just clipped it out a bit.
Okay. I'm also listening on a mobile device, so it didn't come
Perfect.
to the best quality for me either. So I'd like to take a look at that.
Okay.
But so that'll be posted with the link to that will be posted with the PowerPoints.
Yep, and the media is embedded in my PowerPoints, so it'll once I send them out via Slack, you guys should be able to see everything without issue.
Okay. I also just thought of another question too.
Sure.
I probably should ask this when everybody else is here, but so the cleaning of the guns, I have never cleaned a gun before. I'm not super familiar with it. So is cleaning that something that you do sort of on your own accord? Like when you have your own downtime, you clean it, or is there specially reserved times for that sort of thing during OCS?
During OCS, generally there'll be set times to clean the rifles. As a side note, do not call them guns, otherwise they'll make you sing a silly song.
Okay.
So it's a rifle or a weapon is how
Right.
you'll refer to it. Generally, there's set times. Like if there's like white space and they don't have anything super important planned for you, but they need like 20 minutes for you guys to burn, not just sitting around, they may just have you clean rifles. But if you're out in the field, for example, and maybe you're not on watch, but you're not quite ready to fall asleep, but there's still some daylight out, break down your weapon and get it clean. Maybe your squad leader will tell you to get your weapon clean. But just be good at being able to put it back together because you don't know when someone's going to tell you that you need to pack up. So,
All right. Roger that.
yep.
All right. Thanks, Captain.
Yep.
You have a good one.
Hoorah.
Captain Delvin, excuse me.
Yes.
Real quick question. This is untrained candidate Logan Vanaha. I was wondering about for the cleaning rods in the buttstock. I don't know. This is kind of a dumb question, but what do you use to clean those, or do you stow those away as is?
Stow them away as is. Like you'll wipe them down generally, Logan.
Okay.
But like if they're pulling out your cleaning gear to inspect that, then you got bigger problems.
Okay.
Which means you probably annoyed someone negatively.
Oof.
But no, so there's a little button at the back of the M16. It's actually probably the most annoying button in the world to open.
Okay.
You almost need the cleaning rod just to open it. So you push it down and it actually causes the back of the buttstock to open up, and that's where your cleaning gear is maintained.
Oh, gotcha. Oh, okay. Okay. I thought it was in the back end of it.
Yep.
Okay. Gotcha. Right. All right. Thank you very much.
No worries. Any questions, Runnels?
No, sir. I was just waiting out here in the back. I was OCS last summer and prior enlist, so just
Outstanding. You
anytime
probably got more cleaning experience than I do with this thing.
Oh, it's a fun one, sir.
So I found out about the what was it? The gas. I'm trying to look now. The gas ports. Probably when I was at Miramar after come back from the firing range, and the armor was like, "Yeah, sir, you just gotta. You see those 3 little holes?" Like, yeah. He's like, "That's where all the shit is." So that's how I know about that. You know, be friends with the armor. That's probably another thing I should have told them. Be friends with your armor, and they'll tell you how to clean your weapon. You know.
That's true. Unfortunately, we don't get that kind of face-to-face time at OCS, but definitely
True.
TV.
That is true. Then again, when I was at OCS, we had old A1s, Vietnam. Like I think they were actually Vietnam era A1s, and they were so like they cared so little about them that I don't think we properly cleaned them, and we still threw them in the armory because we had to graduate.